Hi, I'm Dr. Andrew Budson, and I'm going to tell you about the 7 steps to managing your memory. So we're going to do a combination of some PowerPoints as well as just my talking to you like I'm doing right now. This is a little bit about me here. I'm the Chief of Cognitive and Behavioral Neurology at the Veterans Affairs Boston Healthcare System. I'm also a professor of neurology at Boston University School of Medicine. I direct the education and outreach programs at the Boston University Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, and I'm also a lecturer in neurology at Harvard Medical School. And I'm going to be talking with you tonight a little bit about the 7 steps to managing your memory book. That's my only disclosure, is that I do generate a small amount of income for selling these books. I think it's about 75 cents a book. So you see, it's not a way to become rich and famous, but it is a good way to distribute information, which is why with my co-author, I wrote this book on managing your memory. And we have also recently written a book on helping individuals whose loved ones are in the moderate to severe stages of dementia. How do you manage all the problems that go along with that as well? But you don't need to purchase these books to take advantage of them. They are available in most libraries, almost all libraries. So for this talk, we are going to focus on the 7 steps to managing your memory. And we're going to cover all these different topics here. But before we get into the 7 steps, I'm going to begin by talking about what you know about normal memory and what you may not know by reading a little bit from the preface. And although I cannot actually see any of you here and now, I want you to play along. And as I read off each of these scenarios in the preface, if you think that this scenario is just something that happens as someone gets a little bit older, I want you to give me a thumbs up and say, oh, I think that's just fine. If, on the other hand, you say, wait a minute, that could be the start of Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, give me a thumbs down to say, wait a minute, I don't think that's correct. So here's the first scenario. So you walk into a room to get something and you forget why you're there. What do you think? Is that normal, thumbs up, or not normal, thumbs down? Well, that one is normal. Woo, thank God, right? If that one wasn't normal, we would all be in trouble, right? How about this one here? You're having trouble remembering some of the details of your life, such as your wedding. What do you think? That normal, thumbs up, or not normal, thumbs down? A little trickier, right? Okay, let's take a look at another one here. When you are driving and not paying attention, you take one or more wrong turns and you end up somewhere you did not intend to be. What do you think? Normal or not normal? These are tricky, huh? How about this one here? You have difficulty finding your car in a parking lot. We all hope that one's normal, right? And how about my all-time favorite? Your family tells you that you've asked that question before. Normal or not normal? So it is my job to empower you with the knowledge during this talk so that you can figure out whether these and other memory problems that you may have noticed or you may have seen in a loved one, whether these things are normal, whether they're not, and most importantly, what to do about them. But before we go into the 7 steps, I do want to tell you a little bit about two characters that we have written into the book. Now, we wrote these characters into the book both to illustrate the 7 steps to managing your memory, as well as to make the book a little bit more engaging, a little bit more fun. I did want to let you know that if you are not really interested in the stories, you just want the straight facts, we have that in here in spades. But because it's a little bit more fun during a talk like this to read the stories, when I do read from the book, it will be from the stories. So here is the first story. This is about Sue. That could have been embarrassing, Sue thinks to herself. She was halfway through lunch with her closest friend before the name of her friend's husband came to her. How could I have forgotten? She thinks again. She was able to remember everything about him except his name. Now, Sue was able to cover for this little memory lapse. In fact, she's become quite good at covering for memory lapses such as these and laughing it off when the lapse was noticed. Sue herself, however, isn't laughing. Sue is worried about her memory. Worried, in fact, is a bit of an understatement. She is absolutely terrified that she is developing Alzheimer's disease. She just turned 80, the same age that one of her friends, Mary, was diagnosed with the disease. Now, Sue has not mentioned her concerns to her friend or her children. Her children would only worry and overreact, and she doesn't need that. Her friends wouldn't be interested in hearing about her concerns either. It would only make them anxious about their own similar memory difficulties. Or worse, they would start to treat her like an invalid and stop including her in their social activities. Sue thinks about some of her other memory lapses. Just yesterday, she walked downstairs to the basement and could not remember for the life of her what she was going down to get. It was only when she walked back to the kitchen that she remembered the roll of paper towels that she needed, which she then successfully retrieved. Now, she doesn't have difficulty remembering what happened yesterday or the week before, but she finds it quite difficult to remember things from her childhood. Is that normal? Sue isn't sure. So that's a little bit about Sue. Now we're going to turn to another character who is Jack. Now, Jack has just come from his local community lodge where Sam, one of his buddies, said, Jack, you should get your memory checked out. I'm worried that you could be developing Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Could he be right? Jack knows that Sam is trying to be helpful, but he has a lot of nerve. Sure, Jack knows he has some memory problems, but who his age doesn't? Just because Sam's wife has dementia, all of a sudden he thinks he's a goddamn doctor. Not that the doctors know very much about memory problems from what Jack could tell. Sam had to take Mary to the doctor 4 times before the doctor actually did anything about it. Jack considers his memory. He didn't think anything is wrong, at least not any more than with anyone else's age. He is 72 after all. At least half his friends have similar difficulties remembering what they did yesterday or were going to be doing the following day. The more Jack thinks about it, the more he thinks his memory probably is normal. Better than normal, in fact. How many people his age can list off their buddies from high school and the make, model, and year of the cars that they drove? Still, Jack feels unsettled. Sam stressed that the reason he was bringing it up is there were medications that Jack could take that could improve his memory. He didn't want to be stupid. After all, he has never been one to run away from a problem. He'd rather stand and confront it. Perhaps he should call his doctor. So that's a little bit about our stories. And now we're going to dive into the 7 steps to managing your memory. And we are going to begin with step 1, which is learn what is normal memory. And so I'm going to give you a filing system analogy as to how our memory works. So let's say there's a piece of information that you want to remember, like someone's name. Well, the first part of our filing system that we need is our file clerk. Our file clerk is actually a part of our brain. It's our frontal lobes right behind our forehead. And it's the frontal lobe file clerk's job to pull information in from the outside world and to put it into the file cabinet. Now, that's good, but guess what? As we all get older, our frontal lobe file clerk is getting older too. And I'm going to give you, again, an analogy as to what happens to our older frontal lobe file clerk as part of normal aging. So the first thing that I want to mention is that our older frontal lobe file clerk does not hear quite as well as she used to. What? And because of that, information may need to be repeated a couple of times before she can get a hold of it and then put it into the file cabinet. Okay, now the next thing that I want to mention is that when our older frontal lobe file clerk is trying to retrieve a memory to pull it out of the file cabinet, she does not move quite as quickly as she used to. And so because of that, it can take a little bit more time for her to walk over to the file cabinet and pull out the information that she needs to. The third thing about our older frontal lobe file clerk is she does not see quite as well as she used to. And because of that, you can imagine that as she's looking for a specific memory in the file cabinet, she may need a hint or a cue in order to find the right piece of information. But importantly, as long as the information has made it into the file cabinet, it should be able to be retrieved, even if it takes a little bit of time or a hint or a cue. So in a nutshell, those are the changes that we expect to see as part of normal aging. Now, step 2 is determine if your memory is normal. And here we're going to talk about the changes in memory that occur with Alzheimer's disease. And we're going to continue with our filing system analogy, but now we're going to focus on the file cabinet. Now, the file cabinet is another part of your brain. It's the hippocampus, which is deep in your temporal lobes. So if you put your fingers on your temples, it is deep in there. Now, the problem in Alzheimer's is that Alzheimer's damages the file cabinet. And the way that I think about it is that it's sort of as if there is a big hole in the bottom of the file cabinet. Well, if there's a hole in the bottom of the file cabinet, you can have the best, most efficient file clerk in the world pulling in the information from the outside world, putting it into the file cabinet. But what's going to happen? It's going to disappear into the hole, never to be retrieved again. And when that happens, even if you repeat information, even if you give a little bit more time or a hint or a cue, it cannot be retrieved. And when that happens, we call it rapid forgetting, because it's as if the information is rapidly lost. And when that happens, the memory is gone for good. And that is never normal. It should always be evaluated. Now we're going to catch up with Sue to talk about some of the other problems that can occur in Alzheimer's disease. Now you may recall that Sue is worried about her memory, and one of her good friends, Mary, has Alzheimer's. Sue is talking with Mary's husband, Sam, to find out a little bit more about Alzheimer's. How did it start with Mary? Sam looks closely at Sue, seeing the worry in her eyes. Well, everybody's different, but I think with Mary, it began when she got lost while she was driving. Mind you, I didn't know what was going on at first. I just knew it would take her a long time to go from one place to another. Looking back, I also began to realize that she was traveling to fewer places. It was as if the circle of where she would go was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. First, she didn't drive into the city. Then she didn't drive on the highway. Then she didn't drive anywhere new. I didn't think it was a big deal at first. Who really wants to fight the traffic in the city or on the highways anyways? But the red flag to me was when I got a call from the doctor's office at 2 o'clock in the afternoon saying she had not shown up for her 1 o'clock appointment. So now I'm starting to get worried. Did she have an accident? Was she okay? A few minutes later, she comes through the door in tears, telling me she could not find the doctor's office. That was the thing that really made me realize that something is wrong. So let's talk about getting lost for a minute. Anybody of any age can get lost. You make a wrong turn, something doesn't look familiar, bam, you're lost. But what do we all normally do? Well, we can pull out a map from our glove compartment, or this day and age, probably more likely from our cell phone. We can use our GPS device, or we can pull over and ask for directions. And using any of those methods, we're back on our way. But in Alzheimer's, paper maps and phone apps and GPS devices can be complicated and confusing to use. We can pull over and ask for directions, but they're often long and detailed and hard to remember. And for these reasons, it's so easy to get lost when someone has Alzheimer's disease. Let's talk about another common problem, which is losing things, misplacing things. Well, that's common in Alzheimer's, but it's also pretty common in life generally. I want you to raise your hand if you have misplaced your keys, glasses, wallet, pocketbook, cell phone in the last year. Has that happened to anyone? Yeah, me too. So if you're losing things, if you're misplacing things, how do you know if it's normal or not? Well, if you were someone who every morning, all your life, you spend 5, 10, 15 minutes, hunting around the house, trying to figure out where you left those keys or that pocketbook. And now you're getting a little bit older and you're still spending 5, 10, 15 minutes hunting around the house looking for things. Well, guess what? That's probably normal for you and not something to worry about. But if you were always someone who was very organized, never had trouble finding things, and now you're having trouble finding your keys, glasses, wallet, cell phone, maybe spending 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour hunting around the house looking for these things. Maybe you had to buy a new cell phone because it never did turn up. Maybe you had to cancel the credit cards because you never could find that wallet. Well, that could be a problem. So the point I'm trying to make here is it's not only what the problem is, but it's whether it represents a change from the way things used to be. Now, the last thing I want to talk about this section is repeating questions and stories. Now, anybody can be halfway through telling a story to a good friend and you say, "Oh my God, I told you this already, didn't I?" And anybody can forget the answer to a question and ask it again. But when there is a pattern of repeatedly asking the same question to the same person again and again and again, or telling the same story to the same people over and over and over again, that is not normal. That is usually due to that rapid forgetting that we were talking about. And as I mentioned, rapid forgetting is never normal. It should always be evaluated. Okay, so now we are going to move on to step 3. And step 3 is understand your memory loss. And I'm going to begin by talking about one of the most common questions that I get asked, which is, what is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease? Now, I bet everybody listening to this talk, you're familiar with the word dementia, and you're also familiar with the word Alzheimer's. But I bet relatively few of you have a really clear understanding as to the distinction between these two words. So let me talk about it. So dementia is a general term that simply means there is a decline in thinking and memory that is severe enough that it interferes with day-to-day function. And as dementia is a general term, I think of it sort of like I think about another general term, which is headache. Now, a headache can be due to a lot of different things. You can have like a muscle tension headache or a migraine headache, neither of which is very serious. But you can also have a headache from a stroke or a brain tumor, which are, of course, very serious. And with dementia, it's the same way. You can have dementia from something as simple and treatable as a vitamin deficiency or a thyroid disorder. But dementia can also be due to a variety of different brain diseases, including Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia, vascular dementia, which is dementia due to strokes, Parkinson's disease dementia, and there are many other types as well. So dementia is the general term, and Alzheimer's is one type or one kind or one cause of dementia. Okay, let's talk about another term, which is mild cognitive impairment. Has anybody heard of that term? Yeah. So mild cognitive impairment is present when there's 3 things. The first is someone is concerned about the memory. It can be the individual themselves, it can be their family, or it can be their doctor. The second thing is that when the individual undergoes pencil and paper testing, yes, indeed, a problem is found. So the concern is confirmed by the pencil and paper testing. The third thing is that their day-to-day function is fine. Now, if their day-to-day function is fine, then by definition, they do not have dementia. Now, if you follow people with mild cognitive impairment over time, about half of them do end up declining and developing either Alzheimer's disease or another cause of dementia. But that also means the other half don't. The other half actually stay stable, or they actually improve and get better. You might say, how does anybody's memory improve? Well, if their memory was due to depression, low mood, when their depression lifts, their memory can get better. Another very common cause of memory loss are medication side effects. And if the individual works with their doctor and their medications can get adjusted, their memory can improve. Okay, so now we're going to move on to step 4, which is treat your memory loss. And we're going to talk about different treatments that can be used in Alzheimer's. But before I tell you about the treatments, I need to tell you a little bit more about Alzheimer's so you'll understand how the treatments work. So we believe that Alzheimer's starts with an accumulation of a protein that is called amyloid, or sometimes beta amyloid. Now, the amyloid clusters and clumps together into these plaques. Now, the plaques get bigger and bigger and bigger until they start to damage neighboring brain cells. Now, when I'm using this word plaque, some of you might be saying, are these amyloid plaques? Are they similar to the cholesterol plaques that can build up on the artery? Are they similar to the plaques my dentist is worried about on my teeth? And the answer is no. Plaque is just a technical term for schmutz, okay? So any abnormal substance that accumulates in the body, we often call a plaque. Now, these plaques, once they get big enough, they damage the brain cells. And inside the brain cells, another protein gets loose called tau, T-A-U. And the tau is very sticky, and it sticks to itself, and it forms these long chains, which can get all tangled up. So these are the plaques and the tangles that you might have heard about in Alzheimer's. Now, once the tangles form inside the cells, it kills the cells. And the cells are normally making chemicals, neurotransmitters, that allow different parts of the brain to talk to one another. And one of the most important chemicals in the brain is called acetylcholine. So in Alzheimer's disease, levels of acetylcholine drop. It's for this reason that the mainstay of therapy for memory loss in Alzheimer's are medications that can help to raise up the levels of acetylcholine. Now, from the perspective of the individual and their families, these are medications that can turn the clock back on memory loss. And these are medications that I bet many of you have heard of. Some of you may be taking these medications. These are medications like donepezil, whose brand name is Aricept, rivastigmine, whose brand name is Exelon, and galantamine. All of these medications help to turn the clock back in memory loss. And when I see an individual in my clinic, I can generally prescribe one of these medications and turn the clock back 6 months or maybe even 12 months. And guess what? The earlier that they come to see me, the more likely it is that I can turn that clock back a full 12 months. And there's a very simple reason why. There are more brain cells that are still living that the medication can work on. Now, we've talked about turning the clock back, but unfortunately, I cannot stop the clock from ticking down. So what that means is when somebody comes back and they see me 2 or 3 years later, yes, indeed, it's likely that they will be worse than when I saw them on the first day. But that does not mean the medication is not still working, because what happens if they stop it is that they'll plummet 6 to 12 months worth of memory function in 1 to 2 weeks. See, because the medication was still working, was still giving them that turning back of the clock. So as long as the person has a good response to these medicines, we pretty much want them to stay on it forever, okay? Or for the foreseeable future, that's for sure. Now, wouldn't it be great if we had a medication that could actually slow down that memory loss so the clock didn't tick down so quickly? And there are medications that are being developed in clinical trials that can do just that. And if you're interested in more information, you can contact me or a doctor or clinic or Alzheimer's Disease Center close to you. Okay, so now we're going to move on to step 5, which is modify your lifestyle. And we are going to again catch up with Jack. Now, Jack has been invited over by his daughter Sarah so that Sarah can show her father what having a healthy meal is like. "So what meat are we having?" asked Jack. "We're having fish," Sarah says, as she dips a brush in olive oil and bastes a large piece of fish. Also on the roasting pan are several garlic cloves and 2 large onions. Waiting for the fish on the serving platter are some avocado slices and lemon wedges. "What? No meat? Not even chicken?" "No, fish, beans, and brown rice. I want you to see how delicious a healthy meal can be." Jack inhales the aroma of the roasting fish. That actually smells pretty good. Where did you learn to cook like this?" "I took a class on Italian cooking. These foods are all part of the Mediterranean style diet. It's one of the very few diets that have been proven to be good for your brain." And of course, Sarah is exactly right. The Mediterranean diet is one of the few diets that study after study after study has proven to be good for your brain. And the Mediterranean diet includes fish, olive oil, avocados, fruits and vegetables, nuts and beans, and whole grains. There's a very similar diet that has also been studied called the mind diet. And in addition to those other things I was mentioning, it includes poultry, such as chicken, twice a week. And you see all of these same benefits. Well, if these are the things that are good for you, you might be wondering, well, so what are the things that are not good for you? Well, I hate to tell you, it's almost everything else. So, red meats, fried foods, fast foods, butter and margarine, pastries and most sweets, white bread, white flour, white rice, sugar sodas, as well as diet sodas, all of these things I put in the category of once in a while foods, not every single day food. All right, now before everybody gets really depressed and they think, oh my God, I can never have dessert again, I did want to remind you that chocolate in small amounts has been shown to benefit thinking and memory and mood. You just have to remember that it's what type of chocolate? That's right, dark chocolate. The darker, the better, because it's the actual cocoa that's in the chocolate that's good for you, right? Not so much the sugar and the butter and the milk that makes it sweet and creamy. Okay, now we're going to talk about exercise. And I don't need a show of hands to know that everyone here knows that exercise is good for you. But I will bet you that I can tell you at least one new thing that you did not know before hearing this talk about just how good exercise is for you and why. But if I inspire you today and you are getting ready to lace up those jogging shoes and head out the door, before you do so, I do want you to check with your doctor and just make sure that your heart and your lungs and your bones and your joints are ready for whatever increased exercise you're going to do. But having said that, I am sure that there is an exercise that is ready for you. So you can do walking, and in fact, most of the studies that I'm going to talk about, they all use just simply brisk walking as the mode of exercise. But of course, you can do a little more. You can do some jogging, you can do biking, you can do swimming, and that's very good on the joints in particular. You can do classes like aerobics classes. You can move in a pool. And even if you can't move your legs at all, there are arm-only exercises that can give you a very vigorous workout. If you're not sure what is the right aerobic exercise for you, see your doctor. Your doctor can help. So, how much exercise do you need to do? Well, the recommended amount is at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week of aerobic exercise. So what's aerobic? Aerobic is exercise that gets your heart pumping, gets you breathing hard. That's how you know that it's aerobic. The other exercise that's recommended is 2 hours a week of exercise that helps with strength and balance and flexibility. So these are things like yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates, and isometric weightlifting. So you want to try to do both each week. So let's talk about some of the benefits of exercise. Well, exercise reduces heart disease and strokes. Now you may tell me that you already know that, but that's fine. It's still important because strokes are one of the major causes of dementia. Exercise also reduces falls, and if you fall and hit your head, that can impair your memory too. Well, it turns out exercise also improves depression. And we mentioned that depression is one cause of memory problems. And in fact, exercise is as powerful an antidepressant as many antidepressants that are currently prescribed today. Did you know that exercise also improves sleep? You might say, well, that's good, Dr. Budson, but what does sleep have to do with memory? Turns out sleep has a lot to do with memory. I'm going to tell you 3 of the reasons. The first is perhaps the most obvious one, which is that if you are tired because you did not get good sleep the night before, it is difficult to pay attention. And if you can't pay attention, you won't be able to learn new information. The second thing I want to mention is that we all make a little bit of this beta amyloid protein during the day. But in the evening at night, we clear away the protein. So it's important for that reason so we don't build up those amyloid plaques. But the third reason is we need good sleep to keep our memories for a lifetime. So we talked about this file cabinet, the hippocampus in our temporal lobes, where all the new memories are formed. But it turns out there's other parts of the brain, other cortical regions, where all the older memories are stored. And this transfer process, going from the new memory file cabinet to the older memory file cabinet, happens during sleep. And so we need our sleep for that. But the most exciting thing I want to tell you about exercise is that exercise actually releases growth factors in the brain that allow us to grow new brain cells. And guess where there are more new brain cells grown than anywhere else? That's right, you guessed it, and it's right on the slide, in the hippocampus, in our new memory file cabinet. And the growth of the new brain cells is so large, so abundant, that even in as little time as 6 months, you can see the increase in size of the hippocampus on an MRI scan. So people sometimes ask me, Dr. Budson, isn't there some magic bullet out there that can really improve my memory? I say, yes, there is. It's called exercise. Exercise truly is the magic bullet. Okay, so now we are up to step 6, which is strengthen your memory. And we are going to again catch up with Jack. So Jack and his daughter Sarah have gotten into a little argument. Sarah has purchased a subscription to an online computerized brain training program. And she would like Jack to spend at least 10 minutes each day working on it. Can you just try it, Dad? I don't like those things, Sarah. I'm no good at computers. I know you're a whiz at this computer stuff, but I'm not. Computers make me feel old and stupid. I'm not asking you to become an expert. I just want you to try it. The website says it can make you smarter and make your brain younger. Sarah, I know you're trying to help me, but I want to go to my pottery class so I can finish my project. And then I'm meeting the guys to play hockey. I don't have time for this computer stuff. Can't you miss your hockey game for 1 week? And your hockey game seems more like a social event anyways. You spend 1 hour playing and 2 hours chatting over dinner. So what's wrong with that? We like to have dinner after playing, and I'm working on eating better, just like you showed me. Can't you just try the computer, Dad? All right. For you, Sarah, I'll give it a try. But I'm still going to go to my pottery class and then go play hockey with the guys. Thanks, Dad. That's all I'm asking. Jack looks at the clock. Okay, he thinks to himself, I can spend 10 minutes on this computer stuff and still have time to go to my class and then get ready for hockey. Jack completes the first set of exercises on the computer. Well, wasn't as bad as I thought, although I don't feel any smarter. So what the studies show is if you spend time on crossword puzzles or Sudoku or computer games, you get better at crossword puzzles or Sudoku and computer games. It simply does not translate to overall brain function. But there are some things that do, and guess what? Jack was doing all of them. So the first thing we already talked about, right? He is engaging in aerobic exercise, and we talked about how important that is. The second thing we also talked about, which he's learning on eating better. He's eating a Mediterranean style menu. But the third thing that's so important is social activities. And study after study after study has shown us that social activities are really important for our brain health and our thinking and memory function. Another thing that's been shown to be helpful is if you want to engage in cognitively stimulating activities that really will help, they have to be new. They have to be different. They have to be things that will stretch yourself. Okay, it can't just be the same old thing again and again. So sometimes people ask me, well, I play a musical instrument. Does that count? And my answer is it counts if in addition to playing the same tunes you played for years, you also play new tunes or really stretch yourself and try a new genre of music. The last thing that, although it sounds just like sort of pop psychology and not real, it has actually been shown to really be beneficial. And that is keeping a positive mental attitude. And we think that the reason a positive mental attitude is so important is for all the obvious reasons. People with a positive attitude are more likely to be social and engaged in life. People with a positive attitude are also more likely to take care of themselves and eat right and exercise. So what about those brain training games? Not enough evidence yet, but I'm sure they're much better than TV. Okay, now another thing I want to mention briefly that we have put into the book is all sorts of different memory strategies. So we talk about how you can improve your ability to pay attention using mindfulness, how if you repeat information that's spaced out over time, you're going to remember it for a very long time. You can make connections and associations between two things you're trying to remember. That's a great way to help you remember them, as is creating visual images. That's another way that can really help you to remember information. You can even combine this with putting the images of the items that you're trying to remember in different locations in your house, in your mind. And then when you want to recall the items in the house, you just simply walk through the house and you can retrieve the information. You can create a catchy rhyme and remember information for a very long time. And we also have a whole section in the book about names, whether it's learning new names from people that you're just meeting, say at a cocktail party, or it's not those names that are the difficulty, perhaps, but remembering the names of people you've known for 30 years. How do you retrieve those names quickly when you need them? We talk about how to do that as well. And we also have a whole section about different memory aids. So everything from sort of a memory table, like where you put your keys, glasses, wallet, pocketbook, cell phone, so you don't forget them. We talk about how you can use a pill box, and there's different types of pill boxes that can be helpful. A calendar or a planner is, of course, a must. A notebook is helpful. To-do lists, little post-it notes, using your smartphone and different apps to help you remember things. Memory aids can be for everyone. Now, there are some golden rules that can help you to use your memory aids more effectively. And the first golden rule is don't delay. So if you have gone through the trouble of putting a little alarm on your phone or your watch to remind you to take a pill, when the alarm goes off, don't delay. Take the medication right away, or you might forget. The second golden rule is keep it simple. So if I inspire you today and you say, I'm going to really get organized, I'm going to go out and buy a calendar for my work and a calendar for my desk at home and one for the kitchen and one for the refrigerator door. It's like, wait a minute. Don't get 4 calendars. That's going to be really confusing. You're going to always be copying things from one calendar, put it into another. You may mix up things. You may forget to write things down. It'll just be a disaster. Keep it simple. Just use one calendar and bring it with you everywhere. And maybe snap a few pictures of it from time to time with your cell phone, just in case the calendar gets lost. Finally, the third golden rule is make it routine. Although a lot of these different strategies and memory aids we've talked about may sound like a lot to learn, once you get in the habit of using these aids day in and day out, they will become part of your routine. You won't even think about them, and you'll just use them. Well, the last step is plan your future. And here we talk about, so what do you do if you have some memory problems? How do you still do all the things you enjoy doing in life? How do you keep working if you're working? How do you do your hobbies safely? How do you keep driving and do that safely? We also talk about, how do you know when is it time to retire from that job? How do you know when is it time to hang up the keys and let other people do the driving? So those are the 7 steps to managing your memory. And if you're interested in more information, you can take a look at the book. And as I mentioned, most libraries have a copy of the book, so I encourage you to do that. You can also go to my website, andrewbudsonmd.com. There's information on there, and some handouts that you can download as well. And I have my email address on there. Feel free to email me questions about you or a loved one. I'm always happy to answer. And you can follow me either on Twitter or on my Facebook page. So thanks very much, everyone. Hope this was helpful. Talk soon. Bye-bye.